It has been a pleasure to serve as the master of ceremony of the two sessions today, and now we're moving back to the program, and I will be passing on the emceeing role to Josh Posaner from Euractiv, who is sitting right there in the back. Josh, while you move here, I will introduce the next session. So we're moving back to the program, to the content discussion. And Ludwig alluded to in his introduction that the main messaging or the thematic highlights of the conference will be about building power, about building bridges. And for the afternoon session, we want to zoom in into a few of these particular areas which we believe require additional policy attention, require greater ambition for Europe to be considered the space power. And for the introduction of the three, Josh, it's great to have you here, and I pass on the floor to you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here as ever. So a lot to get through in the next hour and a half. We have 3 sessions dealing specifically with 3 very different topics of Europe's place in the global space order these days. First and foremost, we're dealing with exploration, inspiration, and discovery. And so I'd like to welcome to the stage Roberto Battiston, who is the incoming president of the European Space Sciences Committee. I think many of you know him as well as the former boss of the Italian Space Agency, and the gentleman probably with the coolest job title in the room, Didier Schmitt from the European Space Agency. He is head of future preparation, preparedness or preparation? Preparation, very good. So, microphones for both of you there. If I could just ask you, first of all, Didier, to frame the conversation that we're about to have. This obviously is an important time. We're looking at the CM25 in a month in Bremen. The EU budget negotiations are underway. What are the prospects right now for the future of European space?
I would say space exploration. Otherwise, it would be too wide. But, well, you know the situation. Everybody reads the newspapers and is aware of some difficulties on the other side of the Atlantic, which of course impacts us because we have been a quite strong partner with the US, with NASA in the last 30 plus years. So with this turbulence, of course, shortly before a ministerial, that's never very good. But on the other side, never waste a crisis. I have to recall that actually exactly 2 years ago, we had the Sevilla summit, where the ministers have tasked us to define a space exploration strategy, plus the cargo initiative on top of it, and we have delivered. I can tell you, this strategy is still valid today. And therefore, the highlights were more autonomy, more self-determination. That's exactly the program that we are applying in Bremen and put it in front of the decision makers.
Excellent. And Roberto, from you have clearly a very good read on European politics generally, but amongst the big space countries, Italy is clearly a leader. What's the position from Rome right now?
Position from Rome is to support ESA, as always was done in the past. But if you allow me, I would like to say a couple of words.
Please.
When I deal with some question like that, Europe, power, and such a gathering of people of such a competence and knowledge, the first thing I ask myself, where we come from. And the answer to that is that we sit on the shoulder of giants. And who are the giants which are allow Europe to get in the field of space, and in particular to the level we are today? So if you look back, this all started a while ago. It all started in a very different time. It all started when somebody like Vannevar Bush said, science is at the basis of an endless frontier. That science is the basis for building up governmental, university, industry, all together for the prosperity of a country. And I think that should be remembered and said it again. We are here around this gathering, and we are looking to the future, and we are asking questions of this importance. We may find an answer to the extent we start from the basics, because not only Vannevar Bush in the United States was pushing for that, but we find people like Vito Volterra in Italy, Amaldi, Auger in France, but even the founder of the European, Schuman, and were basically building up this infrastructure, allowing Europe to become leader starting from knowledge. And for the future, knowledge is what is keeping together all these elements in this context, including space. I glanced through this debate poster down there. There is market, there is government, there is be the first and things like that. The one word which is missing is science. And please keep remembering that we started from science. Science is about the future, and science is also the motivation why we want to become a space power. Because on top of that, we can build industry, policies, and have a focus for the future. Now, the question about Rome, I think Italy has been among the founder of ESA and has always continued to support ESA, especially in the last several years in various ministerials, as is increased investment, and so is a loyal participant, a loyal contribution to this development. But let me add into that, that all of that will be succeeding to the extent that Europe will gather together, we work together, we collaborate together. As you know, in difficult times, there is always a tendency to split following interest, short-sighted interest. And I think, again, I repeat, looking to above the horizon. I think we should do as people did 50 years ago, founding institutions which are really bringing Europeans together.
Very good, thank you. I think actually that brings us to the point I wanted to get to at the end of the conversation, but we should maybe start with now, is this issue about how Europe plans when it comes to exploration programs, with so much uncertainty in the alliances with other space powers, principally the US. Of course, we're used to thinking about the decisions taken around the European Service Module in the context of the timeline that NASA has for Artemis. This is in flux now. And as we go into quite a critical funding summit with major questions about the future of the ISS, major questions about the future of the Artemis program, how is it really possible for ESA to prepare for the future, which is your job, Didier, with so much uncertainty in the world?
Yeah, that's the core question. Obviously, now it's very difficult to answer these type of questions when you're in the final mile of a marathon to the ministerial. Therefore, we have attacked the problem before, as I said, 2 years before already. Now, I want to jump a little bit on what Roberto has said about science. Knowledge has to be a real driver. The US space policy is about dominance. Dominance against others. You can imagine the countries I will not cite here. We don't have this narrative. So one part of the narrative has to be knowledge. But it's not the only one. Otherwise, we have a space science program, and that's not exploration. Exploration is about going somewhere and operating somewhere for science, but also as a geopolitical, so to say, stance, and to motivate the young generation and so on, so this inspirational part and so on. So there are many objectives in one. Now, how do we respond to the current situation? We have learned quite a painful lesson about the Rosalind Franklin ExoMars mission. 10 years of turmoil. I don't want to repeat what happened, but now we are on a course to land in 28. But we're still relying on the US to launch. So from now on, if we start far, Mars, we need to be able to launch, go, land, operate on Mars. For the moon, it's the same. We need to be able to launch, go, land, operate. And this we will be doing with the Argonaut lander. Of course, we will continue to be part of the Artemis architecture with the ESMs for Orion and as a gateway participant. But we have to judge where we put the accelerate and where we release a little bit the pressure because of what's happening currently. For LEO, you can do a copy-paste. We have decided, as I said in the Sevilla conference summit, to do a cargo return service. We will be able to go to the station and come back. That's a first as well for Europe. So, and we will do it for ISS and post-ISS. So exploration is about capabilities. If you cannot go somewhere and operate and go on your own, you have a problem. But of course, I heard a word this morning about autonomy, open autonomy. I think this is very important. Autonomy is not autarky. It's not because we want to just do ourselves and with nobody else. On the contrary, the more we are autonomous and self-determined on what we want to do, the more partnerships we can build. We do it with Japan, we do it with India, we do it with the Emirates, and we are talking with South Korea. So, and others. So this is very important to show that Europe can be in front, to lead. But for this, we have to have a strong narrative. Autonomy for autonomy is not a story.
So then, Roberto, what is the path if what Didier is talking about is the first rung of the ladder, the cargo return program that's already very much in train, and there will be further announcements, I presume, very, very shortly about it. Where do we go from that?
Just to jump on what has just been said, I would say that exploration without purpose is a spectacle. With purpose become capability. I mean, I don't care which kind of lander or which kind of instrument you're going to develop, provided that we know why we do that. If it is just filling a gap, I don't care. This is not what we want. Europe cannot become a power which is, if it is filling gaps, sometimes gaps created by other countries somewhere else in the world. So to be autonomous, we have to choose which are our dependencies and what are our autonomies. You cannot be first everywhere. We have to be first in certain context, and then you need to be autonomous because you cannot rely on your policies, whether of primary importance, to somebody else, and have to then to gather collaboration, keep collaborating, creating alternative collaboration whenever is needed, develop excellent diplomacies, as ESA is doing right now, because it's short of time. All of that need time to be built. You cannot change your strategies from one day to the other. And let me also add something into the discussion. Let's do, whenever we see good policies, the same. And in this particular context, I said we should not only say rearm Europe, we also said rebrain Europe. In this moment, on the other side of the ocean, we have thousands of excellent scientists asking, begging, asking to come back to Europe, the different countries. That could help boosting Europe as a space power because of knowledge, of attitude, on capability to bring program in a very concrete, practical way. They may help gluing together the various parts of the program because they have an extraordinary experience. So these are the key points, the key issues to create a power, space power in Europe. Piece of hardware, piece of metal, may be not so important. Eventually, you should do that because eventually this is part of the effort. But if there's not a long-term vision above the horizon, I think we are making circles.
Understood. In that case, I think we've clearly had over the last few decades a failure of Europe generally to elucidate and explain a big vision for space. I know there have been many calls for that to happen, so why don't we give a little pop at doing just that in the next 10 minutes. Didier, what, from your sense of all of your work, both in the EU and at ESA, is our vision as Europeans for what we should do in space?
Yeah, that is one of my core issues, because if we don't solve this problem, all the rest, what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, has not enough sense, and therefore the politicians will not follow us. You see, the situation today is very simple. It's like being in a double-seater plane, and somebody has invited you to the back seat to be the board engineer, and the pilot suddenly has a problem. Okay, even bailing out sometimes. And now suddenly you are confronted with, okay, what do I do with this plane? It's not really my plane. Do I pilot it? Can I land it? And what's my mission? The mission before, the mission of the US, as I said, the space dominance aspects and so on, is not our narrative. So we're in a plane, but we have to pilot ourselves now, and we have to have a purpose for this mission. So for me, it's relatively simple. We have to continue in low Earth orbit, to be present, to have astronauts trained and astronauts be operating in low Earth orbit for science, for eventually commercial aspects in the future, but also to de-risk the deep space exploration. That is the ultimate goal. You cannot justify a LEO investment, even post-ISS, without having the long-term objective of deep space endeavors. For the moon, we have to be able to go there and to have scouting missions to see exactly what's there. People talk a lot about ISRU, in-situ resource utilization, and so on. But first, we have to go there, to land, to operate, to see what's going on. what are the resources, what conditions they are they exploitable or not, and to be also physically present. It's very important to be physically present, and we have to have Europeans on the moon. Otherwise, we're not part of history. We're not in the picture. And for Mars, the same. We have to be able to go and land heavy landing on Mars for science, deep drill, and so on, but also to prepare future logistics if we want to have a role again in the history books when the first human missions will start. And I can tell you it takes 15, 20 years to prepare these kind of things.
So a human-rated spaceflight program is inevitable, basically. It has to happen. Roberto, how realistic is that in the current fiscal environment that we live in?
I mean, the question is always the same. Where is the money coming from? I think the money is coming from taxpayers. Taxpayers willing to vote government which are willing to spend in space. It's a long way to come from who are the citizens and who taking decisions. It's not something you can say one day to the other. So the issue is how to let our children play with space, how to make sure they learn about space not when they are adult, not only through their dream, or they maybe helping them to dream more ambitious goal about space. Let me give an example. We are known in the world to provide open data from Earth observation. Copernicus, we mention all the time. You know, open data is not charity. It's a strategy to help our European environment to grow, to make more application, to collaborate and to compete with other countries, and to have our children play with those data, know about the data, immerse in those data. This is why we do open data policy. And we know that this is often not exploited, that there are countries far away which are exploiting those data more than us. I don't want to change the policy, but I want the European, when they are young, to learn about it. You know, one of the fundamentally important NASA policies about letting the population know, citizens know about space, a fraction of their investment in space was going to schools, to teachers, to pupils, to elementary schools, to grow them up. If you were ever attending this kind of the launcher where these youngsters were there, you understand that for sure space will go on, even up and down with like right now, but it will not stop because the population love it, knows it, talks about it. And when we run polls in Europe or in Italy to know who is the space agency, some of them respond in Europe, NASA, because we're not capable to reach out in the way. So we should invest much more in making the next generation be able to pay taxes to justify the politician to invest in space.
It's a good point. I just want to complement this. NASA, ESA is not NASA, okay? You know, ESA, there's a panoply of things apart from exploration, and the US, NASA does only exploration. They spend $250 million a year on communication, only for exploration.
And maybe to finish up that, you know, one of the strengths of Europe, now talking about EU, is the Erasmus program. I mean, having people for 6 months, for a year to travel around, make an exam in different universities and come back with this unforgettable experience of being abroad. Different countries have different chances to have their pupils, to their students to go out. I mean, for space, let's think of some Erasmus on steroid, meaning using overall Europe through Europe PhD program, exchanging people through the various laboratories, and making really Europe a space being undistinguishable from the point of view of somebody belonging to one country to the other. We need this kind of basic sharing of proudness by a population which is through the borders. This, by the way, is a program, it's a problem for all kinds of aspects of Europe, but we're discussing about space here. So let's concentrate on that, and the fact that this community is so strong, is so visible, is so growing up, may help also the Europe in other fields if we work in this direction.
We need a brain drain to Europe, which is probably happening now. It's a good occasion. But we need also an intra-European brain drain to space. We need to have the best people. And for this, we need to communicate and have ambition, of course.
Those kind of talented engineers are very hard to come by these days, right? And competition is very strong. if you know, you're growing up, you study engineering, you're very talented, you would tend, I would imagine, to end up in America, working for one.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. People are coming home, you think?
I mean, I don't know if they're staying home. They may want to come back to home. In this moment, they are not trying to immigrate in America. This I can guarantee for sure. How long it will last, I don't know. But this moment in time is very, very, very special.
It's not a friendly place right now, therefore.
I mean, I should not comment on that. People read the newspaper every moment.
Yes, clearly. So look, if we're going to get to a place where we're going to, the number that's often spoken to me is, on average, a human spaceflight rated program would be about a €1 billion per year investment, sustained over a decade or more. Didier, you talk about 15 to 20 years, so even if we got cracking today, we're looking at 2040 for when we're up and running as a minimum. What is the prospective timeline, even theoretical, hypothetical, for going from cargo return 2027 or 2028 all the way to really seriously putting on the table for countries a human spaceflight program?
Again, the question is not how and when, the question is why. If we don't solve this properly, we have an issue. So I talked about the why we need to go to low Earth orbit and so on. So once you have explained this, then you do the retro planning. And then you need to say, we have the cargo, we will have a post-ISS, either European-led with the US, commercial, hybrid, and so on, we don't know yet. Okay. But then there is something missing. There is the crew flight missing. I mean, and we don't want to pay for every flight an American company, whoever it is, to transfer money to the US. We'd rather have the brain drain and do the spacecraft ourselves. But this needs a leap in technology, but we can do it. We have the means to do it. It can, to answer straightforward, between 7 and 10 years. Okay. But we need to start. We need to have the authorization to start even without a political commitment for the full development. If you don't start, you will never know how much it will cost, how long it will take, what are the key technology de-risking you have to do, and what is the operational, so to say, scenario. We need to study this, and therefore, we always make the same mistake in Europe, in other places as well. We don't put enough money on the technology side, on the de-risking and studying options. We don't put the money where it needs to go. If we don't do this, we cannot put it in front of the politicians to say, this is how much it costs, this is why we want to do it, this is how we want to operate, and this is the whole story. So, yeah, how much it will cost? More than what we have today.
But maybe this is clearly issue of money, but the question could be rephrased somewhat differently. You know, the way you ask things to politicians may change his or her answer dramatically. Imagine that you say, okay, it will cost something more, but I will have the time to provide the product, half the time to go in orbit, half the time to create a capsule which can carry human being, okay? So if you tap on their ambition by showing that we are improving dramatically the scenario from being backseat on somebody who has a driven airplane to the front cabin side, some of them may answer in a totally different way. Clearly, if you have a continuous evolution, 10%, 5%, 15%, this year more than that because of the situation in defense and so on, is business as usual. And then you will fight with everybody else around the table. You need something which breaks for a moment the standard discussion and brings in something completely new. And okay, I don't know, I cannot anticipate the result, but I think the discussion will take a slightly different, a significantly different orientation.
I mean, autonomy has a cost. It will not be better, faster, cheaper. It will be better, faster, more expensive. It has a cost, full stop. And then talking about a crew vehicle, we will build on the cargo experience that we will have now for a crew, but that's not the end of the story. We have to leapfrog. We have to think about space planes already. Why not? I mean, there are companies in Europe who are able to do it and who are now getting out of the woods. They don't come even from the space arena. So we have to have not just the next step to be prepared, we have to have the over next step. And what I'm saying always is, why not have the guts to leapfrog? instead of copycat and say we need to catch up. I hear this all over the place. I've been at the top level in the Commission, advising on future technologies in the President's office. It was always in every field I worked on, and I worked across a lot. It was always Europe needs to catch up in supercomputing, in whatever areas. And this we should avoid. We have to prepare le coup d'après. What is the next real step? And to start de-risking already 15, 10 years before. If we want to heavy land on Mars, if we don't start now, we will not be ready in 2040, I can tell you.
Excellent. I understand we have a microphone in the room, right? Is that correct? For any questions, should somebody want to ask a question? Anybody on that side? There we go. There's one there, this gentleman. Thank you.
Well, we discussed what is the cost of doing this or doing that. But I believe that to be honest with decision makers and with our societies, we need to tell them also what is the cost of not doing something or not doing science, of not developing technologies and so on. Can you elaborate on that?
I agree, but you know, not all countries or powers are the same. I mean, clearly there are at least two different ways of making long-term policies. One, the American one, which can be synthesized in dominate and keep dominating, full stop. The other one is the Far East one, catch up and surpass and pass over the competitor. Europe is a mixture of that. It cannot be dominate, but we want to be prominent in certain things. And at the same time, we realize that we are holes digging in our field that we have to fill to be autonomous. So I think this should be the third direction, the third way, understand where we want to dominate and where we want to catch up. And that may help certain discussion to go in a more rational way. We cannot dominate on everything. Sometimes it's even ridiculous because we don't have the structure. But we cannot be second on everything. We should be a combination of that.
That's nice. I need to remember this. Not dominate, but promenade. An additional element here, budget. Yeah, if you look at the budget of ESA, we are too focused on it. I had a lot of comparisons in other areas. We give usually this figure of less than €2 per citizen per year for space exploration. And with whomever I speak in society at large, so to say, they say, why not more? You know, we did a poll, a professional poll in Europe, and the average European thinks that space exploration costs €750 a year. That's what people think as an average figure that they gave. You see, it's far from the €2. So I was also at a hearing in the French Parliament, and we talked about policy and strategy and so on, and suddenly they said, we talked about budget, and then one of the parliamentarians said, this is it? Are we spending the whole afternoon just for these few billion? You know, because they have other things to talk about at national level. So really, if you confront the politicians with the real figures comparative to other areas, it helps, I would say. We are too focused on our issues and our budget. We have to be much more, let's say, transversal and show to the politicians the real choices that they have.
Any brief question on this side?
Lady.
Yes, the left one. Very good.
Yeah, very brief question. I'm just wondering what keeps you up at night as a worst scenario? What is the biggest risk if Europe fails to act? Thanks.
I'm not sure I understood the question.
What keeps you up at night? What's the worst case scenario? What are the big risks?
Oh,
right? Yeah.
I sleep very well during the night.
I don't, I can tell you.
But I'm a scientist, he's a manager. So he has more serious problem than I have. What stupidity? is what makes me very worried. The growth of stupidity in our world, or the amount of stupidity, looks like a physical constant tending to increase with the time, especially in a time where the so-called artificial intelligence is not understood for what it is and is not exploited what it is, and we are depending more and more on somebody else, always the same guys, always on the same side of the ocean. This sometimes makes me some bad dreams during the night. Not very often, but it may happen.
On the top of my list, it's the issue of on-off, of the domino effect to say, you have a lot of problems in your program because of the US and so on and so forth, and therefore let's wait. This is the biggest mistake we could ever do, you know? But to react and to say, no, on the contrary, we have to accelerate. We have to know to accelerate in which direction, you know? There is no favorable wind if you don't know where to go, where to sail. Huh? That's Seneca. It's not me. It was 2,500 years before Jesus. So things have not changed since, you see, in several millennia. So you need to have objective to accelerate, and that's exactly what we need to do now. In the next 4 weeks, we have to succeed this ministerial by convincing that we have to push the button and not to wait and see.
Great. And just a final question from my side as we frame the debate that's going to happen in a month in Bremen, and also the conversations about how to divvy up the MFF. I think everybody in this room is conscious of the splits between ESA and EU member countries over what to do in space and why to do it, dating back to Hermes in the 90s. Do we have a sense there is a consensus building around having a vision and building a program, whether it be human spaceflight or whatever? Is there more consensus now? Do we see progress, Roberto?
May I pass to him?
Okay.
Okay, there's nobody else here. Well, I've spent 10 years in Brussels, so I should be able to at least diplomatically answer. If you look at what happens in the meteorology or Earth observation, ESA is doing in Meteosat, for example, we do the first satellite and then it's handed over, so to say, for the operational part and the subsequent satellites. Sentinel, the program, the Sentinels could not exist if we hadn't had 30 years of experience within ESA to build observation satellites. Galileo, we caught up and we had a program and it became an operation situation. ESA is here as a R&D organization, essentially. ESA should not be transformed into something which is operating. Of course, we have to operate our own satellites. That's maybe the exception. So when it comes to, let's say, put things in a recurrent situation, you know, when you have to buy every year a cargo or other things and launch it and so on, these type of things could be shifted outside of ESA. Of course, the Commission is welcome to take it up. That would be a big debate. So let's separate the two things, initiate and develop and do the brain stuff, and then for more the service aspects, it should be pushed somewhere else, liberating, of course, the budget to prepare the next step. This is what we are here for, and not to be, let's say, each time have a program which we have to operate too long and to have replication too long. This will hinder the investment for the new programs.
Maybe just adding into that, I mean, in a little bit more, I don't know if naive or visionary way. I mean, I was always convinced that as the Euro, as Galileo, as Copernicus are truly European flags, European astronaut is a flag which should belong to the EU. It belongs to ESA for historical reason, but from the political point of view, from the message it conveys, from the breadth it can achieve, this is a typical European-wide value. So that I don't know if it is realistic or not, but clearly we have a kind of bomb in our side which can use to do a better Europe, a better space, and a better ESA, because it, of course, will be part of this game, but of this activity. But clearly, the flag is the European one that we need to support if we want to become a space power.
Excellent place to end. Thank you. Roberto, Didier, thank you for joining us. Okay, and so now on to the really juicy stuff, defense. I would like to welcome Colonel